Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video I have for you one of the most bizarre tales I've told in a while, like in a long old time. It's a weird ass story, and the guy it's about, his name be Thomas Randolph. Randy Tommy, I like to call him, because 6 times he was married. Didn't get divorced 6 times though, if you hear him a barking, big dog. See, Big T, the list of adjectives I could use to describe him, well that list would be very, very long, and none of them would be positive, but hey, that's just all part of the fun. Insert fart noise. By the way, whatever kind of preconceptions you might have about him, I guarantee you he did a lot more, and probably still will continue to do so, as he's still sucking air, this guy. Before we get into it, please subscribe to see new true crime videos every week from me. Also, please check out the That Chapter podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, on your Spotify's, on your iTunes, on your Amazon Musics, wherever. Every Monday, I cover a brand new story, which I've never talked about before. It's a podcast exclusive. And every Friday, I cover a mix of new cases and also retell some of my old favorites. Please check it out. It's a lot of fun. Now, I can't think of anything else to say in the intro. Don't say this part out loud. Bit late now, me who wrote this. Let's give it a go! To set the scene real quick, Las Vegas, which I think is Spanish for the Vegas. That is where we're going today. You know, what more do you need to know? Cards, gambling, chips, and ladies of the night. Ding, ding, ding. Okay, so let's move past that. We're talking about Big T and his big... Don't say that. By the way, let's just get it out there. Beautiful head of hair on him. A glorious mane. Now, this story, it lasted decades, but let's begin in let's in media res this sucker. Let's begin at the inciting incident. And what an incident it was. In May 2008, Las Vegas, Thomas Randolph dialed 911. There had been an intruder at the home he shared with his wife. Shots done, bang banged.
In the house, you know?
No, he's in the garage. He pushed me by and ran on out. I know it. He stripped me off. He tried to rip me off.
Do you know what his name is?
Mike, I don't know if that's...
So where's the guy you shot?
He's in the garage. He was running out the garage as I was getting out, as I was coming in.
Okay. Is he dead or what is he?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just shot him a bunch of times as he had a gun.
Okay, let's focus on your wife. Who shot your wife? He did?
He did.
This was right around 8:45 p.m, and on that call, Thomas said someone had broken into his house and 2 were down. Thomas's wife had been shot, and Tom himself had shot the intruder. By the time the emergency services arrived, the police arrived, both injured parties were dead. 57-year-old Sharon Randolph had been shot in the head. She lay in the hall. Mike Miller, the intruder, the burglar, also shot dead. He had been killed by Tom Randolph after Tom followed Sharon into the house and encountered Mike in the hall. There had been like a brief struggle, but Tom, he had his 9mm, so he said, "See you later, pal." And at the scene it looked like that. Beside Mike's body was a ski mask, a bag filled with jewellery, and from the items laying around, it appeared that Tom and Sharon had been out to dinner, just arrived in the house, and found Mike there robbing them. There had maybe been a bit of a struggle, but numerous gunshots had rang out, and... Shinny.
You okay, Tom?
Been a long day.
This is my partner, Ken Hardy.
Hi, sir.
You had told us that you had employed a person by the name of Mike. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did Mike know you guys were going to dinner tonight?
Yeah.
Now, during the police, a couple of questions for it would actually turn out that Tom knew Mike reasonably well. Mike actually worked for the Randolphs. He was kind of like a handyman. He did odd jobs here and there. For a couple of months now, they'd been kind of working together. But it appears that maybe during that time, Mike had actually been using these couple of months to case out the joint. Now, Sharon was a single mother from New Jersey who moved to Vegas for work opportunities. eventually ending up as a hairdresser. Sharon and Tom would meet on Match.com, Tom telling her he was from Utah and out of work at the time. But previously he'd been a special ed teacher, a carpenter, a truck driver. Wherever there was work and whatever it be being, he be doing. They married after not too long while on a cruise, and they were very happy together. Then this happened. However, much like literally everything with Thomas Randolph, nothing was as it seemed.
I get right here and Sharon's laying in the floor, face down. Her head's just barely in the bedroom, if that. I said, Sharon! Sharon! I thought it just seemed like a shadow or something over this way. He kind of rushed up on me a little bit, and that's when I just pushed him. And he started going out toward the shed. I don't know how many times I shot him, but I just kept right on going. Boom, boom, boom. And he just laying there. And then started coming back down this way. He wasn't moving. Some noise.
Squared off on you, still had his mask on?
Yeah.
If he'd had his mask off, you'd have known it was Mike, right?
Oh, yeah. And I was still shooting. It wouldn't have mattered a bit.
First of all, Thomas said he opened up on Mike and that Sharon had been killed in the hallway, but the majority of bullet casings, shell casings, were found in the garage. Second of all, he contradicted himself just a couple of times. Sharon walked into the house before him. Now, he initially said he heard the gunshots and then went in after her, but then in a police interview he said he didn't hear anything, he just walked in and saw her on the ground. His timing was a little off too, from when he left the restaurant to calling 911. For example, a neighbour heard gunshots at around 8:30, but Tom didn't call 911 until 15 minutes later, when he said it was only 2 or 3 minutes at most after the incident. The ski mask found, well, Tom said he had shot Mike in the head while Mike was wearing the mask, but there were no bullet wounds in it, and even if Mike had taken it off, there was still no blood in it. It looked like it had simply been dropped beside him.
Is there anything I can't tell you at all that happened that day that made him believe that he needed to get into your house that night?
I did. I took 20 grand out of the bank. I had 20 grand transferred in Utah. He was trying to shoot me. I told you this over and over. He was trying to shoot me. I like you. You I don't like, by the way.
Okay.
I don't know why. I just don't like you. Something else, guys, because you know what? Unless you come and just tell me I'm under arrest or you just really need to talk to me to clear something else up, I'm probably not coming back out here for at least 30, 40 days.
You think we should tell you you're under arrest?
No, because if you are, you f***ed up. You f***ed up. This one's an easy one for you. Because the forensics is everything. It has its issues.
Another odd thing that was discovered months after the murder was that Sharon Randolph, Tom's now dead wife, she'd left everything in the will to her daughter, Colleen. Everything to her daughter. It seems like it was revealed that Sharon had changed her will from leaving everything to her husband to everything to her daughter, and Tom had no knowledge she had changed her will. What an odd move to make on the chessboard of, who gets all your shit. So please for feeling something is a bit odd here, something a little bit off. Now Mike Miller, he was originally from South Carolina, so two of the detectives, they flew all the way over to South Carolina to try and get a little, get to know him a little bit better, get to know his family, his friends, see what they thought of this whole situation. His family said, what you hear a good few times, like they couldn't believe he would do something like this. He didn't have it in him to kill. Definitely not without being either groomed or falling in with the wrong crowd. And one of the people these two detectives spoke with was an old friend of Mike's, and she told the detectives that Mike spoke about Tom like a lot, and that also Mike had said Tom had given him a gun. And she also said this.
He told me he wanted me to kill his wife. He said he would. He said, I don't know. He told me he wanted me to kill his wife. He said that's all that man was talking about. Killing his wife,
kill his wife, huh? Don't mind if I do. And then also, looking into Thomas Randolph, this wasn't the first of his wives that died. This was his fourth wife that had died. So, let me ask you this, folks. What's the most annoying thing about cooking your dinner? Well, first of all, you gotta decide what you're actually in the mood for. Then you gotta go out to the gosh darn grocery store and buy all your ingredients. Then you gotta bring it all back and cook it. And then, guess what? You got a load of stuff left over because the grocery store and the supermarkets always sell you way more than you actually need. So you end up with like 5 bottles of soy sauce in your cupboard, which you'll never use again. That's probably been there for a couple of years, or at least I do. Well, that is where HelloFresh comes in, helping you skip that dang old grocery store, saving you time and moolah with some delicious, fresh, seasonal meals delivered directly to your door. HelloFresh, they done sent me out a week of meals so I could experience it for myself. And you wanna know what? It ruled. I got the BBQ beef ragu rigatoni, the chorizo and crispy potatoes, which is an all-timer for Mike, and the teriyaki sesame chicken. Genuinely, it was so yum yum in my tum-tum. It was so easy to cook. All you need to add is salt, pepper, oil, and water, and they take care of the rest, giving you the exact ingredients, instructions, and nutritional information on your meal. And the recipes are super interesting too. Like, usually I cook the same 3 crappy things I can again and again, or whatever I can just throw in the microwave. But with HelloFresh, you get exciting, exotic meals, ones that sound better than getting life insurance. At the end of a gosh darn long day of giving it a go, the last thing I want to do is having to think about what I'm gonna cook. So instead, I can have a go at what the HelloFresh lads sent. And you wanna know something else? They send you the exact amount of ingredients for the meals, so there's no waste at all. It's cheaper than the grocery store and 70% less expensive than dining out. But with the type of dinners they send, it feels just like that. So go to HelloFresh.com and use code THATCHAPTER60 for 60% off and free shipping. That's a lot, like a heckin' lot. You gonna be eating good with over 40 stress-free and yummy weekly recipes. So once again, go to HelloFresh.com and use code THATCHAPTER60 for 60% off plus free shipping. Check out the links down below, and a huge thank you to HelloFresh for supporting that chapter. When sponsors send me out their products, it's because they really believe in them, and HelloFresh has every right to be. It's awesome. Alright, let's get back to the video. Thomas Randolph had been married 6 times, 4 of them meeting untimely and sometimes grisly ends. The 2 survivors said they came within a fart's length of being accidentally by something Tom was doing. And guess what? You'll never believe it. He had a habit of cashing in Tom had taken out 4 life insurance policies on Sharon, over 350 grand. Nice chunk of ching. Nice chunk of change you can get by hiring someone to murder your wife and then murdering the hitman. So, hey, dead men tell. They don't tell any scales for you now. You don't hear any stories out of them. Thomas Randolph had been married 6 times. Catherine Thomas, Becky Galt, Gaina Allman, Francis Randolph, Leona Stapleton, and Sharon Koss. Catherine and Gaina, his first and 4th wives, were the only ones still breathing. And Tommy Boy, he was none too pleased, none too chuffed that the house he lived in with his, well, now dead wife Sharon, he was none too pleased when he learned that it had been left to Sharon's daughter, Colleen, because he obviously assumed that he didn't know she'd changed the will, so he thought he was getting it all. And now, obviously, fearing something nefarious, that's not a word, nefarious, was going to happen to her, Colleen now began to fear Thomas Randolph. She had a feeling that, yeah, this whole burglar, killing, no, it doesn't sound about right. She was not having that kind of story at all. So she forbade him from entering the house, and that's when she discovered whole treasure chests filled with driver licenses from past wives, documents from all the various lies, bullshits he had led over his many, many years on planet Earth. In 1975, Thomas Randolph was 20 years old, and that was the year he married wife numero 10, Catherine. She now lived in Carnation, Washington, which you might remember from the Christmas Carnation murders, which is a video I covered way back in the day. So, these two detectives who were looking into Thomas Randolph, and they had a really weird feeling about this whole story about Sharon Randolph and Mike Miller. They wanted to learn a lot more about Thomas. So they decided they would go and speak with whoever they could. They started off with his first wife, one of the only ones who was alive, who now lived in Washington. She spun the tale of good old Tommy Boy. They were a high school romance. Look at the hippies in Utah, and they would have 2 children together. Now, during their marriage, Tom, he really wasn't one for the old work. Now, wasn't happening. He wouldn't work on batteries. But what he would do was, well, become more and more volatile as time went on. I'm talking outbursts, but not talking them, doing them. That's what Tom was up to. Like, from pretty soon after marriage, he was just a wild man. From small things, he would explode. He began to have affairs. He became a professional skier, if you know what I mean. Wow, this guy does cocaine. In 1983, they divorced after the psychological abuse became too much for Catherine. This was around the same time Tom started asking around if someone would kill someone for money. They wouldn't. Not this time. His next wife was Becky. They tied the knot in 1983. Becky inadvertently tied the noose. This was in Utah also, and Becky's death had been ruled as suicide. Now, before her death, wink wink suicide, which I'll get to, their relationship also was not very, very good. In fact, judging from all the marriages, it seems like Sharon, his last wife, who got murdered, had the best out of the lot. But yeah, Becky was not too happy with old Thomas. They had a house together. He would keep the basement locked, and he'd have women over there all the time, at times, making Becky come down and, hey, check it out. Now, also, money between Tom and Becky was real bad, way behind on all their bills. And at one point, Thomas and Becky, they borrowed money from Becky's aunt to pay some of the bills. Or just one bill, the only bill that mattered to Tom. Yeah, he made sure the payments on that one were up to date, and the relationship, which you can already see is absolute dynamite, well, it did not get any better, and Becky was afraid something might happen if she left him. She was later found shot in the head, apparently self-inflicted. She was found dead in her own bed, gun in hand, and a note on the kitchen counter. Now, one of the detectives back in the day, he thought this suicide, self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head was odd. For a start, she was lying in her bed with the blankets up, and the entry wound was like this. It was like, would have been very awkward to do. Second of all, it was done with her non-dominant hand. So a lot of just positions just seemed very off for someone to shoot themselves in. However, that scene was never secured, as they just simply went with, well, self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. But when the detective, feeling something was off, he wanted to go back, get a warrant, search the place again. By the time he did, as the scene was never secured, by the time he got back there, Thomas Randolph had scoured the place from top to bottom. There was jack shit left of anything that could give them any kind of evidence. Something else, though, the police learned, once again, was that Thomas had been asking around if somebody would take care of a little something for him. Take care of his wife for him. One thing about killers, I guess modus operandi is the word, but they never really learn. They always just kind of keep doing the same shit over and over again, waiting for it to work. Keep trying it till it works. And eventually, I guess it would. But Thomas was doing this for about 40 years before he actually successfully pulled it off. And when he didn't, he just said, fine, I'll do it myself. Very unimaginative bunch of bastards. A man named Eric Tarantino had been approached by Tom about killing Becky. It was very similar to what is believed to have happened with Mike Miller. Tom, he was hanging out with this Eric, getting him to do odd jobs for him. And at this time, poor Tom, his main was selling drugs. And then he kind of was like, he would start hinting at something, building up towards it, before eventually just asking outright, hey, want to make a quick buck? Kill my wife. Eric said no, to which Tom said, well, wrong answer, buddy. You kind of know about it now, so Eric, he then played along with it. He said, oh yeah, changed my mind, sorry, had to think about it. You know what? I'm good to go. He played along with it. He said, yeah, sure, I'll kill my wife. They went to the shooting ranges together, testing out guns. All that sort of stuff. But then Eric eventually, he called Becky and was like, "You'll never guess what Tom wants to do." She probably had a pretty good idea. And then Eric fled. Now, Tom was actually arrested for Becky's murder in 1989, and Eric Tarantino would testify against Tom. And while in jail awaiting trial, what did Tom try to do? Well, he tried to do probably exactly what you're thinking he tried to do, which was hire a hitman to murder Eric Tarantino before he could testify. But yeah, it just so happened that the hitman he was trying to hire was an undercover cop, so he's gonna pay him $2,000 to kill Eric, and then he was like, fuck, you're a cop, aren't you? Yeah. Ultimately, the jury, though, found Thomas Randolph not guilty of the murder of Becky. It was deemed a suicide by the jury. I guess the prosecution just didn't have enough. He did plead guilty, though, to trying to hire a hitman. That charge would be downgraded, and he would spend 18 months inside. He would still get life insurance, Becky's life insurance. He would also sue the county sheriff's office for what he said was harassment, essentially, by the whole thing. So he got a shitload of money. And he met Leona in 1994. He married her and lived with her in Indiana. The marriage didn't last long, though, less than a year. I mean, I guess Leona was the only one who kind of acted on what she was feeling, and she outed 5,000. Though about a decade later, she died. She sadly died of cancer. So he didn't actually kill her. But, I mean, you know, kind of, she could have very easily could have been her. This is some real Henry VIII shit. It's like, divorced, beheaded, shot in the head, died. Let's see who's next. In 1985, he married Gaina. There is sweet F all gap, like, between these marriages. He wasted no time at all. This was in Indiana, and they met through the newspaper. Guess what? He soon took out I feel like Thomas Randolph is like this channel's spirit animal. Now, Thomas wasn't exactly upfront about his whole history. Whoops, you don't want to see this back. He wasn't exactly upfront about it, but she soon learned about your wives, going through a few of them. One, he kind of had been accused of, her. And not long after, she herself suffered a near miss when Thomas was cleaning his gun, and it accidentally went off in her direction. Now, it didn't hit her, but it very, very nearly did. Like, he's cleaning it and just accidentally goes off. How does that happen? Like, really? She left soon after, or rather, ran, because, well, wasn't he, Thomas, that is, asking around if somebody would do a little job for him once again. This time he went to a guy, he was like, the exact same shit he did with, we can presume, Mike Miller, and also with Eric Tarantino. Hey, buddy, pal, let's hang out, have a few beers. Here's a crazy idea. So he said, listen, here's a quick buck. I'll pay money and you can even take my car. Right? Just burst into my house someday, kill my wife, and shoot me in the leg to make it look like a burglary. Robbery gone wrong, or whatever. So the guy said, interesting idea. I like your style. But no, because you could just kill me. And that would actually be a smart thing to do, because then I can't tell any story that will dispute your version of events. So he turned Thomas down. How right he was. In 1997, he married Frances 6 months after meeting her. Now, Frances suffered from a heart condition. Now, it wasn't a life-threatening one, but it could be somewhere down the line. So Tom pressured her into getting surgery to fix her heart condition. Extremely risky surgery. She came out of the surgery and was doing just fine. All grand. Doctors gave a big old double-barrel thumbs up. It was all a success. She was doing great. Then, one day while she was still in the hospital, happy as Larry, Tom asked if he could be alone with her for just a couple of minutes. And then she died. She just died. Straight up. Because the surgery she had just undergone was risky, it wasn't deemed a suspicious death, even though she was fine from one moment, dead the next. Tom, he refused an autopsy and he had her cremated right quick. Once again, he got life insurance, viewing all his wife's ATM machines at this point. What a man. He also sued the hospital for, I don't know, malpractice or something for her death, and got a hefty payout out of that one as well. He got like $1.5 million. Now, one thing that was discovered about Frances and the suspicious timing of her death and just everything that was going on, I mean, these things one by one, they're not really terribly odd, but when you add them all together, it's not looking great. So one thing that was discovered was a videotape of Frances talking into the camera, reciting her last will and testament, or whatever. But off camera, you can pretty clearly hear Tom feeding her lines about what to say.
You want me to go ahead and do it now? This is Francis Louise Randolph, and I'm making this tape so that people will know what I want Rachel for myself when I pass away. I would like for Tom to raise Rachel because he's a stepdad to her. And Tommy, I hope you never have to look at this tape because I hope we do it and put it away because I love you too much to think someday I will see it.
That's all.
I love you, Tommy.
What do you want done with yourself?
And for my burial, I would like to be cremated and put along with Tom in a place. I don't want to be separated from it, so please, Tommy, do what you think is best because I know you do what's right for you.
And then Thomas Randolph met Sharon, and here we are again. The police learned of everything I just told you. And 8 months after Sharon Randolph was shot dead, and Mike Miller also, Thomas Randolph was arrested back in Utah. He had been living there with Mama, and in the wee hours, they dragged the bollocks out. He was arrested and charged with the murders of Sharon and Mike.
Can I talk to you real quick? Put your hands on your head right now. Put your hands on your head. Now. On your head. Keep on it. Watch it. Come out. Let me see your hand. Taser. Let me see. Taser. Go on the ground. On the ground. Oh my God. Touching me. Oh. On the ground. On your belly. Oh. Oh. Hands behind your back. My hand. Oh my God. Move. What are you doing? You're under arrest. You're standing. Oh my. Oh. Jesus. Oh.
Close hands. Let's get him up.
Get him out.
God. Oh.
Stand up and walk. Thomas, you understand that I was there to arrest you on homicide warrants, correct?
You seem to speak pretty good English right now.
Yeah. You understand I was there to arrest you on a homicide warrant, right?
I don't remember me resisting.
Are you a gun enthusiast? Do you have guns?
Of course I've got guns.
Okay,
Did I have one in your face? No, but you had one in mine.
The prosecution were going to go with everything they had. I mean, that's how they could get the district attorney and the prosecutor to sign off on it, was by saying, listen, on the surface, doesn't seem like there's a whole lot here and it's kind of circumstantial, but when you add it up to all the shit he's been up to over the years and all the people we can have testify against him from these decades gone by, it's pretty clear what happened here.
On May 8th of 2008, when Michael Miller woke up, what he did not know and what he could not have known is that by 8:30 p.m. that night, he would lay dead in his best friend's garage, shot 5 times and killed in cold blood by his best friend. The person responsible for Mike's death and the injury you see in this picture is the man that sits before you this morning, Thomas Randolph. Mike Miller only knew half of the plan for that day. Thomas Randolph knew the whole plan. During that time period, Mr. Randolph was married to Sharon Randolph. And the state will prove to you that the plan between Mr. Miller and Mr. Randolph was to kill Sharon. For Mr. Miller to go into the home and to kill Sharon, make it look like a residential burglary. And that's exactly what Mr. Miller did on May 8th of 2008. The defendant had 4 different life insurance policies out on his wife Sharon Randolph, and totaling $360,000.
The defense said they tried to get the Becky case thrown out, any evidence of that thrown out, so it couldn't be mentioned during the trial, and they failed at that. So the prosecution had Tom's long history to use against him now.
20 years earlier, the defendant hired this man, Eric Tarantino, to kill his then wife, Becky Randolph. You will hear from Mr. Tarantino today, and he will tell you that the same reasons existed back then. that the defendant had 4 life insurance policies out on Becky Randolph that totaled $530,000. And the only reason why Mike Miller is dead is because Eric Tarantino lived to tell the story, and Thomas Randolph was not going to make that mistake twice.
They needed it though, because as I said, a lot of the evidence was circumstantial. There was no proof he hired Mike to kill Sharon, and there wasn't a whole lot proving it was not a justified home invasion. His 2 surviving wives testified against him.
He had a lot of extracurricular activities, namely other women.
What happened at your kitchen table?
Supposedly, I was told there was no bullets in the gun.
That's what the defendant had told you?
Yes, and that he was cleaning the gun at the dining room table, and the gun went off and put within, not very far away from me, and put a hole in the kitchen floor.
Would it be fair to say that the hole was inches away from you?
Yes, because I could see the smoke.
Do you believe that based upon what you know about the situation and your then husband, Thomas Randolph, that the shooting in the kitchen was an attempt to kill you?
Yes.
The daughter of Sharon, her friends. Basically, he had made a fair few enemies over the years, and now all the chickens were coming home to roost for the T-Dog. At the end of the trial, Thomas Randolph was found guilty, among other things, of the murders of Sharon and Michael Miller.
The State of Nevada Plaintiff versus Thomas William Randolph Defendant. Verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant, Thomas William Randolph, as follows. Count 1, conspiracy to commit murder. Guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. Count 2, murder with the use of a deadly weapon. Sharon Cause Randolph. Guilty of first-degree murder with the use of a deadly weapon.
During one of these sentencing days, there was a couple, because a lot of people would speak at his sentencing. He decided to walk into court wearing a Cowboys jersey, which, I mean, it's a death sentence right there.
Sorry that all this happened. You've heard what you've heard, and you can't imagine how much I miss Sharon and how much I miss Francis. I don't want to spend the rest of my life on death row, and I don't want to spend the rest of my life in prison, but my mother and my children, and I suspect for me. But yeah, it's going to be hard on my family more than anything, so I don't know what else to say.
The jury in the above entitled case, having found the defendant, Thomas William Randolph, guilty of count 2, murder of the first degree with the use of a deadly weapon, Sharon Cause Randolph, impose a sentence of death. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, are these your verdicts as read? So say you one, so say you all.
Yes.
However, in 2022, an appeal his defense brought based upon, well, they disagreed that any evidence from Becky's death, her self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head, should be included in his trial now in Vegas. That appeal was successful, and so the Nevada Supreme Court overturned the conviction. They said, give him another one! To date, though, he has not gone on trial once again. He was due to in 2022, but it never happened.
I'm asking if my lawyers file a motion to have me transported to one of their offices, because there are literally hundreds of pictures and dozens of hours of video and audio that I have to listen to because I haven't had that yet. It's been 14 years and I haven't seen the whole walkthrough, just because I've had 25 lawyers in 14 years, starting my 14th year, and the only 2 that did anything was my Utah attorneys. So it's really getting frustrating to me because, like I said, I know what I know. I photocopy everything, and this is nonsense. I'm not going to put up with this much longer. This is nonsense. I want the hell out of here.
And that, my friends, is the story of Thomas Randolph, a story unfortunately, to date, left unfinished. He is still awaiting his retrial, and there is no mention of when that will be. And it seems like Tommy is doing everything he can to make sure that does not happen. What a ride he has had, though, on kind of everybody else's dime, with all his wives, all his lies, all his bullshit. You literally cannot believe anything about Tom. Like, nothing is as it seems. Other than his hair, though. Alright, I will give him that. His hair, it's pretty sweet. This was also pretty sweet.
Laser tape. On the ground! Oh my God! What you done to me? Oh!
Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this All That Chapter video. It means so much to me, so thanks. Here, listen, if you're looking for more That Chapter videos or content, go check out more videos, or please check out the That Chapter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, it's on all podcast platforms, so check it out. You'll find lots of podcast exclusive stories right there, stories that you won't find on the YouTube channel, and all sorts of weird ones, but super interesting, so go check it out. But until the next one, I'll talk to you real soon, so, you know, just until then, like, kind of take care of each other and yourselves, really, please, because I love you. Mike out.